Hello, and welcome to another Think Through virtual technology discussion. My name is Dave Kearney. I'm the founder and CEO of Seamless Partners, a business systems and technology consulting company specializing in software design, global engineering team building, process automation, and continuous improvement. Today's topic is bot or bust. Robotic process automation, or RPA, is seeing explosive growth around the world. Companies like UiPath, Automation Anywhere, and Blue Prism, the largest players in the RPA space, have seen unprecedented growth this past year. And Microsoft has just joined the ranks to deploy their own RPA solution into the mix. The world's thirst for automation seems to be accelerating, especially since COVID has entered the picture. For those of you new to RPA, I'll take a moment to explain. Robotic process automation, abbreviated RPA, is a technology that allows people to automate repetitive tasks. Those process automations are called bots. Say, for example, you work in an insurance company processing claim forms. Each claim form might require a set of tasks like looking up information on a website or in a database. You could create an RPA bot that would automatically open the windows you require and extract the information you need to process the claim. Automating the task could speed up the form processing as well as eliminate human errors. These bots do not come without controversy, though. On one hand, companies have seen dramatic increases in productivity by implementing bots where they are most effective. On the other hand, there are those who question the actual savings, scalability, robustness, and high maintenance costs that are inherent with bots. The industry is moving towards more intelligent bots that can overcome some of the current drawbacks. Is that promise real or just industry hype? In today's discussion, we're going to take up some of these interesting topics of discussion. Today, I'm joined by two longtime RPA industry experts, Vijay Navaluri and Naladri Panigrahi. Vijay is co-founder and chief customer officer at TechForce.ai and serves on the company's executive team. He is responsible for fostering a company-wide customer-centric culture. He is known for steadily introducing eclectic strategies aimed towards creating value across verticals: marketing, sales, customer support, product development, and operations. Vijay comes with vast experience across technology positions in multinational companies, including Deloitte and Oracle. He has also served as a member of NASSCOM's Regional Council and been on the steering committee of NASSCOM's Startup Initiative. Naladri is the head of RPA and digital transformation at V2 Solutions. V2 Solutions is a leading implementation partner for RPA. In his current role, Naladri has been delivering RPA solutions primarily with UiPath and Automation Anywhere across the globe. In the past, Naladri has led full-stack software engineering solutions and has been working in technology for more than 16 years. Welcome, gentlemen. I'll start by asking Naladri my first question. Is RPA a new innovation or an evolution of scripting and programming people have just used to automate tasks in the past?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Dave. So I would respond to it this way, automation always existed in some form or other. Let's look back what the industry had been doing to automate things that RPA is doing today. So there were automation scripts written in different languages, which were run through the cron jobs. There were Excel macros doing a lot of things with data from various sources. There were database triggers, which were automation within limited scope within the database. QA automation tools like Selenium or QTP are near examples of what RPA can be doing or is doing today. But the issue is what led to the emergence of RPA. What it did different was to structure the development and execution of these automations. It actually defined a common operating procedure for everyone to follow to automate things, irrespective of the scope of the application and the IT infrastructure. It brought in easy platforms and gave the right level of titles to these functional elements involved in development of this automation. For an example, the term bot was coined with emergence of RPA, which is functionally nothing but the same old script that was triggering some set of activity 10 years back. When RPA specializes, where RPA actually specializes is the human-like interaction using the mouse and the keyboard. Plus, you can make use of traditional methods of deeper integration using API endpoints. So you can make use of both worlds from a single technology instead of looking at individual solutions for specific type of automation. With RPA emerged a group of specialized individuals who are great at automating things. They are kind of domain experts with automation, but not the application development. So this was a job that was being performed in the past by the full stack engineer through scripts or other unconventional methods using core development language till few years back. And the most important part, what RPA did was to centralize management and overall control of the automations and their related assets across the enterprise so that things are not scattered across at the mercy of different divisions who developed script for their own purpose, each led by maybe a full stack developer. So this actually opened a floodgate of automation proposals across enterprises. When business users could realize that they can get things done faster and there's an easy way of doing it, no doubt it existed in the past, but that wasn't easy. All right. So to answer whether RPA is an innovation or evolution, I would say it's an evolution. But it took the concept of automation to a whole new level. The level where it is more specialized, adapted centrally with defined governance model. The best part is it was designed for a purpose, with a purpose. RPA will move up the value chain to include more advanced functions in future. It's already doing it. It's adapting AI and ML to a certain extent. One of the very practical adaptation of the AI and ML that complements RPA really well is the document extraction platforms, which allows the RPA bots to read the documents from the PDF, images, etc., then do the processing. And it's been a great use case for enterprises dealing with thousands of financial documents for digitization. Hope that answers, Dave.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So what you're saying, I can gather that you think it will continue to evolve. It's been evolving for a long period of time, but now it's going to continue to evolve past the functionality we have today. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's right. And I strongly believe that it will continue to evolve, but the evolution would be around broadening the scope of this technology rather than evolution against its baseline functions. You cannot deny the fact that the IT system, consumer grade and enterprise application will keep growing. As more and more of these applications, systems, ecosystems grow or evolve, there will be constant need for data exchange. And because no single system can suffice the need of this data requested by those millions other applications, I also foresee that in future, many of these applications would allow native data exchange methods inbuilt to limited area. But I do not believe that any application can afford to build data exchange methods with every possible applications out there. With that said, there will be growing need for RPA, like products that will allow such data to be exchanged within systems. In fact, I strongly believe that eventually RPA platforms in some years would standardize their methods of exchanging data, thereby helping applications and their ecosystems to rely more on these systems for data exchange instead of building their own native functionality. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a win-win for both parties specializing on their domain of expertise. I hear similar protocols are already being formulated with the early stages of emergence of the open source RPA providers. Yes, you actually heard it right. Open source RPA guys are moving pretty fast, and I'm sure they will soon adapt. They will soon be adapted by the medium to small enterprises sector who really cannot afford that kind of $15,000 to $20,000 per annum license barrier from the top quadrant player. But every business in today's digital world has a need to automate. So there is no escape from it.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get back to the expense part in a minute and the cost of RPA in a little bit. But before that, I want to bring Vijay into the discussion. Vijay, I've heard terms. How do these terms like intelligent automation and hyperautomation relate to the core RPA? Are these words coined by technology enthusiasts to just rename the same robotic process automation? or is this the same old wine in a new bottle?
It's a very good topic for debate now. What do you call RPA today, right? And I'm sure hundreds of analysts and thousands of followers of industry keep debating about the singular term, that whether we should be calling it RPA, whether we calling it IPA, whether it's calling it DPA, and then now HPA, hyperautomation. I think it's all about the tech lingo, and the value and the product and the promise is same. That it's basically I would put it legacy tax that companies are paying, right? So RPA is technically started as a legacy tax that all enterprises started paying for their legacy IT systems. Whether I have to change it or I have to just pay a tax for it to continue using it and make sure that I still put those systems in my digital workflows. So to me, it started RPA as a legacy tax, and the evolution, as Niladri mentioned, has to go upwards, right? Like any technology has an evolution in terms of adding value. So that's where I think RPA is going through right now. We can call it anything that we want in some of the words that I mentioned, but the value to the customers is about automating their day-to-day work, both structured and unstructured together. So you can put them all under one bucket called RPA, or you can put them both structured and unstructured use cases in two different buckets and call them as a hyperautomation. For the customers, it's just about automating their day-to-day work, whether structured or unstructured or both. That's how we see it. And from our own idea of starting TechForce as a integrated automation platform and providing these intelligent e-workers or digital workers is about removing these barriers of looking at technology as individual pieces, but look at holistic as a work automation. And the way that we see RPA is about robotic productivity assistance, right? So that's how we see it. That's exactly how we think it will be eventually. If you have to bring scale to it, we can call it any of these words as the industry is referring to.
So, is it RPA in isolation? Is it a great value for any organization, or is it RPA with something else that works better? Give us some examples. So give us some examples of how RPA is solving kind of real problems on the ground.
Absolutely. So if you see the genesis of RPA, it always started in the back office, right? Most of the companies that started selling automation, the promise of automation to back offices, which were actually inundated with manual day-to-day work, process work. If you look at finance and accounting, which is one of the most adapted area for automation today, right? If you look at any service where you have deployed your RPA, 40 to 60% of the use cases that come from finance and accounting, right? Because finance and accounting is an area where companies never touch transformation. Those systems, those ERP systems, those legacy applications have been not touched. Customers try to adapt new technologies on the customer-facing part, on the CX, on the front office side of the work, where you're actually trying to automate faster in your sales, marketing, customer service divisions. That's where the transformation has been last 15, 10 years. And the digital transformation been giving better customer experiences. That's where the SaaS actually have proliferated a lot. But if you see, most of the enterprises still have very legacy back office systems. That's the promise that RPA came as, right? Like a band-aid for those legacy systems to bring them back into the customer journeys. If you look at the use cases point of view, finance and accounting has been the most adapted, followed by IT support, then followed by HR, shared services, followed by some core industry operations, whether it's insurance, claim processing, whether it's banking, loan processing. Some of these core operations of different industries. These are the areas where you actually have seen RPA started from the bottom of the pyramid and started going a little up in the value chain by taking unstructured data into it, right? Earlier, it was just handling structured data, like, go and enter some data into an application, taking it from Excel, taking some, go into an application, log into something, download something, whatever manual that the people used to do has been automated. Then what's next, right? What's next is you look at a little bit surrounding what you do around that. Now, the data entry work that's been the prime use case for RPA now started having the data entry. So what is the source for the data? It's unstructured data documents, whether it's invoices, whether it's purchase orders, whether it's claims. So it started adding a little bit more, going a little upper in the value chain and started taking, okay, how can I process those documents also in automated way, and then use RPA for data entry or data processing. So if you see, most of the use cases fall under these two use cases. One is, data entry, data processing, and then surrounding unstructured data extraction, right? That's how the industry has evolved into. The way that we see is, you start seeing more and more unstructured use cases coming in, because as you would know, 80% of the data in enterprise is unstructured. And as you also would know, only 20% of the enterprise applications have APIs, right, today. And it will take a long time for this 20% to become 80% or something else. And it's not easy, and it's not easy to maintain. There is a technical debt of building and maintaining APIs as well. So I think there will be coexistence of APIs and RPA just from the techno-commercial perspective, because you just can't have API for everything to integrate, make applications work. So you got to deal with these unstructured use cases. And how do you deal with it? That's the answer that RPA is giving us. So in that examples, if I can give you entire core operations, entire back office operations, and more unstructured use cases from the customer facing point of view, whether it's your contact centers, whether it's your call center operations, all those things will start coming into the automation bucket. The more unstructured use cases start opening up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that was a great answer. So let me go back to the expensive. Now, all of this is happening in organizations. How expensive is it really to adopt RPA in dollar terms? What are the real costs? Are there, and what are the cost factors? Are there hidden costs involved in this? I mean, how much does RPA actually cost?
You want me to take it, Niladri, or are you going for it?
you have.
He asked me a tricky question, so I was trying to dodge the bullet. So what else? This is actually an expensive scenario today, if you really look at the market. Actually, companies talking about, publicly talking about take one bot license, and services companies will get 5x, 10x revenues delivering services around it. It seems ridiculous. It's actually much worse than ERP era, where at least ERP vendors used to say, hey, take ERP product, and there would be 2x, 3x services. Now, actually, the problem that RPA is supposed to be solving is plugging those holes of those ERP systems. Now it's saying, take a license and actually you'll get 5x, 10x ROI on the services. Means for end of the day, customer is paying through their nose for all these implementations, and on a promise that, on a hype that they're going to get a lot of return back, and all that. So I think that hype cycle is dying down. The customers started becoming much more intelligent and smarter in making their choices. As technology gets democratized, the cost keeps coming down, and new entrants keep coming and making it much more commoditized. Like what Niladri mentioned, open source companies are coming in. People like TechForce are there, who are actually SaaS companies. You don't have to invest anything. You can start your automation journey as low as a couple of $100, and start seeing your ROI as you scale up. So there are different types of entrants in this space now, trying to bring the total cost of ownership down for their customers. For example, people like us, where we are bringing pre-built AI-powered automation solutions to the market, where you don't have to really go through building an RPA, building an OCR, building a chatbot, building a human in the work loop. So we give an entire solution as an application with a very minimalistic configuration, self-service way. So I think innovation will continue, because the problem is still predominantly there in the cost of operating this technology today. And I'm sure there will be many other innovators doing it in different ways in the market, bringing the total cost of ownership down.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The cost of ownership has to go down just for this RPA as a technology to sustain at this point of time. I strongly agree.
All
right. Okay. So let's switch gears, Niladri.
Our customers do too.
Okay.
I'll just.
Okay. Niladri, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the industry. So some of the big brands are having wild investor valuations. UiPath closed its e-funding round in July with a valuation of more than $10 billion. $10 billion. Are these companies really worth that kind of money?
That's the question is basically an extension to what actually Vijay answered in the last Now, see, the story of RPA growth is not limited only to UiPath, but UiPath is a live example of how enterprises can ride over technology wave even before there is a large-scale adoption. So as of July this year, the valuation stands at $10.2 billion, and that's way ahead of the competition. UiPath increased its revenue tenfold in between 2017 and 18 from just $15.7 million to $108 million. That's a phenomenal growth of around nearly 600% plus. And they had a market share of 14%, but that's way back in 2018. UiPath closed last December 2019, at nearly 360 million annual recurring revenue. That's ARR, with a net new ARR in the fourth quarter exceeding nearly $60 million. So they have a net new ARR, which is no less. So these revenues are mostly contributed by this Fortune 500 enterprises specific to the regions of US and Europe. The year 2020 and 21 is where we will get to see the ground reality on how things have transformed and whether the RPA wave is going to sustain. Having said that, I still believe that the valuation is kind of insane, as RPA tools are supporting backend automations and kind of bridge solution, as opposed to being a front-end app that can actually consuming big IT budget. Now, the answer to the second part of your question was about other players, and there are so many trying to carve a niche for themselves. And then there are open source platforms, as I was talking in my first question, to moving up at the very, very first pace. And I can name few of those like OpenRPA, TechForce.ai, though they are not in the open source space, but they're very, very reasonably priced. Now, many at times, it's difficult to compare the actual pricing between these platforms because of the way they are bundled. It's difficult to make an apple-to-apple comparison so as to draw an unit-level pricing. However, with a very, very pricey entry barrier with the top quadrant players, the MSME sectors, the medium, small ones, have started experimenting with the smaller or the open source vendor for their non-critical process. And the good news is that some have even started scaling up based on their initial success, and I'm sure Vijay can vouch for that. And this trend will continue, similar to what PHP as a web development language did nearly 10 to 12 years back. So there is space for everyone to grow. However, overall RPA mass adoption in the next 1 or 2 years will decide the survival of the fittest, and the rest will probably collapse. Right? What's your thought, Vijay? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's too early. I think the jury is still out on this. I think it's 5 more years to see, because if you look at any technology adoption, right? If you remember, I'm sure Dave would have witnessed this better than us. I'm respecting him, is a little more senior to us in this whole industry. He must have seen much more evolution since 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, right? So 2 decades minimum. And if you've seen the Y2C, the Y2K era, and then you have seen the ERP era, now then the cloud era. So every technology starts with a hype, but some technologies stick and scale, and some go away. So there was a ERP promise, there was a cloud promise, and I think they did their job well. Now there is an automation promise coming in, right? So whereas there are many ancillary technologies like blockchain, augmented reality. There are so many other IoT technologies that came in hype, but what captures imagination and skills like this is the ROI, right? I think customers have to see ROI of the technology, right? That's what ERP did. That's what CRM did. That's what HCM did. All these are categories and waves, and right, and then the cloud, and there is a clear ROI in terms of managing infrastructure. Was there so much pain in the, but for the last 15, 20 years, and that's how cloud started growing up. Then the SaaS journey. Now, if you look at automation, what we see is it's very, very nascent. Look at all the players together. There are around 70 players, 80 players, maybe, if you can add. I think
growing every
so many
week.
Others, but yeah. So if you look at all of them, combined total number of customers is not more than 10,000 companies. Officially, what they declare, right? SAP has 500,000 customers today. Microsoft has 1 million customers today. So imagine the scope of adoption. That the canvas is so big for automation to be adapted, from starting with RPA to intelligent automation, AI technologies. And that's why there's so many entrants, right, in different dimensions. You look at from Microsoft is entering, SAP is entering. I'm sure a lot of OEMs will start entering in the space, like SAPs and Microsoft, and a lot of niche players, startups like us are entering, and there are specialized players who are actually BPM companies are entering in this space, like Pegasus of the world, and all this. So everybody's entering this space because they know the customers have seen, tasted the blood. Right now, they are going to scale this, and as every technology starts, it starts enterprise and starts democratizing, and then the mid segment and the small segment will start realizing. Same happened with ERP, same happened with CRM, same happening with cloud, and same will happen with all the other technologies, right? So what we see is the next 3 to 5 years, the jury is out. There's a big canvas to fight, and everybody can create their own niche and carve out their solutions, which actually can topple this, right? You remember Siebel, you remember all the leaders now they're toppled by their cloud counterparts like Salesforce, PeopleSoft now toppled by Workday. So there are category leaders, and there was nothing beyond them. Every company just adapted. If you remember CRM, it's Siebel. If you remember it's HCM, it's PeopleSoft. Now exactly Salesforce and Workday kind of companies are coming to our mind like that. So I think there is nobody can survive this until they continue to innovate. So the jury is still out. I don't think it's too early to decide that these 3 are big, these 5 are big. We'll see in 5 years how things are getting disrupted.
I do like what you have to say about the ROI, because I think that one of the really interesting things about RPA is that ROI is you can easily calculate it. It's different than a lot of the other technologies where it wasn't entirely clear. We knew that we wanted to move towards a lot of those other technologies, but it wasn't entirely clear what the ROI was. But with RPA, the ROI is really clear. You can calculate it pretty quickly. Okay, so my last question is for Vijay.
Exactly.
RPA companies have made an attempt to bring automation to the hands of business users, not just developers. I know I've seen this in the microservices world, and talking about MuleSoft and some other places that are trying to bring it to the hands of actual business users and not just requiring developers. They label it democratizing automation. How true is this story? Is it simply a marketing gimmick to draw the attention of the business user?
So it's a very interesting question, and I always get one question in my mind as an analogy. One thing in my mind when I heard this, it's like bringing farming to the buyer. So the buyer never wants to farm. That's why there is a farmer exists, right? So if you tell them that, hey buyer, I'll let you make your own farming, and it's very low code. You can do your own farming and eat your own food. Yes, it's nice to have. There are some people do that. They farm their own vegetables, they farm their own things, and you know how much it scales, right? So I always put that as an example. So you can never take out the farmer in the equation. It's the same with developer in the world of IT and technology, right? So because business user doesn't want to do that, you can actually make it as easy as eating a cake to him, right? Or you can ask, say, hey Alexa, build me a bot. It can build it, but still business user doesn't want to do it. He would want to say even that single word. The reason being it's not his job to do it. Business user's job is to get his business work done, not automate, not to do the work. It's somebody else's job. Why would they do it? So I think in that sense, it's good that there are a lot of it's the life of a developer is becoming much more easier because of the low code, no code promise, which should be that how, because you cannot expect farmer to work like a laborer. You need to make farmers' life easier, and same with the developers. You need to make developers' life easier to build and maintain the code. I think that's the promise of all these low code, no code tools, including what we do at TechForce.ai, and that's how as customers should look at it. And anything apart from that, you see it as a promise that's not needed.
Yeah, if I can vouch for what Vijay said actually. in my experience with consulting so many of this, because we have been an implementation partner for UiPath as well as Automation Anywhere. So what we have seen is that it is initially very exciting for the business users to jump in because the platform says so that they can be developing something, they can be developing their own small bot and things like that. So they get a kind of training initially. They jump into doing things and they do it. But actually, when it's time to scale it up, or as far as the stability of similar bot and the automation is concerned, they fail actually there. So typically we said, if a business user has kind of a scripting background or development background in the past, he is in a better position to do the automation development using RPA. But simply saying any business user can jump in and start developing their own bot and automate their own process, I think it's something that's not possible. It's a promise being made by platforms, but I strongly don't think that's happening or that can happen actually.
I have to agree with that. In my experience, anything developed at the business user endpoint is generally not necessarily scalable and ends up being a maintenance nightmare. So anyway, well, that's really great. I really appreciate the discussion, guys. I think that about wraps the discussion up. I'll finish with a few thoughts. Although RPA is not without its issues, it seems to solve a lot more problems than it creates. Companies in almost every industry are using RPA bots to automate repetitive and mundane tasks that have traditionally required a bunch of people to accomplish. Using RPA, companies can now free up those people to do more meaningful and knowledge-based tasks. However, the benefits are not always simple and cheap. As we've heard today, it seems like RPA is still growing and maturing. Bots require supervision and maintenance and are not yet intelligent enough to really correct themselves when the environment changes, as it often does. There are changes afoot to add machine learning and artificial intelligence to bots and enable them to self-correct and improve over time. These advances could cut down on the current amount of effort to achieve success. I want to thank my guests, Vijay Navaluri of TechForce.ai and Naladri Panigrahi of V2 Solutions for joining me today in this lively discussion. Thank you for all who joined us today. Stay safe and be well.
And it was wonderful being with you, Dave. Look forward to see you. Thank you.
Yep. Nice to be in this evening with you guys, Naladri, Dave. It's a pleasure.